Welcome to the Miller Report. Wow. Today, what a night, what a day. Wake up, America. So excited that today I have with us on the Miller Report two special guests. One, and the name of the movement is just so interesting to me because this is what the Miller Report is all about. It is about politics and it's about New York real estate. So we have two guests with us today that are part of a movement called Save Our City 2025, which is just right up my alley and so fantastic. I want to welcome Betsy McCaughey and Mark Jaffe to the Miller Report. Thank you. And how are we feeling today?
Very good. I'm particularly delighted when I looked at the voting statistics from yesterday to see how many New Yorkers were receptive to the idea it doesn't have to be this way, right? And that is the whole philosophy behind Save Our City. Ray Kelly and I came together and said we need to tell people it doesn't have to be this way. We can create a mechanism which will be their megaphone to say we want safe subway rides, we want good public schools, we want order instead of chaos on the streets, we want to bring the businesses back, we want to entice people who left this city to make it home again, and we want to stop the anti-Semitism. We have an agenda.
This is just fantastic. I think we've just fast forwarded every single episode I've had of the Miller Report. So we just condensed it in 1 minute here. Right. Mark, welcome. I wanted to tell everybody who's our guests who you both are. So Betsy McCaughey, many of you may not know, many of you do, but she was the former lieutenant governor of the famous George Pataki. Everybody loved George Pataki, no matter what side. He did such great things, yes. And thank you for serving with him. And the city really was fantastic when he was our leader. And Mark is the president and CEO of the New York Chamber of Commerce. Also, tall order, big job, helps our city. So the two of you together. And tell me, how did this come about, Betsy? Where did this whole Save New York come about? Let's start with that.
Why did I found Save Our City? And I have to give Ray Kelly credit because we're doing this together. And we have a long list of very distinguished people, including Mark, on our founders committee.
Ray was on the Miller Report last week, and as of today, we're at over 100,000 views in 5 days. It's gone viral. People love him.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
And for good reason.
Yes.
And he is our public safety expert and also a visionary because he knows New York doesn't have to be this way. And the idea was this. I looked at the voting statistics last November. Only 7% of registered voters turned out in the primary and only 12% in the general election. That was last November,
I thought it was 25%.
Ago.
It's worse. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, it was so much worse. It was for electing the entire 51 members of the city council, a very important election, yes. Right? And yet so few people turned out. And I thought, we have to give people a message. When I looked at the number of people who turned out, 578,000, right? That was barely less than the number of people who simply voted with their feet by leaving New York over the last 3 years. More people voted with their feet than voted at the polls.
But Betsy, we all know everybody may be a lot of people are, happy that Trump won. Some are not. But SALT, they left because they don't want to pay the taxes. So we have to address that.
They left for a variety of reasons.
But that was a big one. Follow the money.
Okay, they left for that reason. They left because quality of life is declining. Mm-hmm. There's disorder on the streets. People hate the fact that the public schools are discarding standards, yep. Right? And they're lowering the standards. They're talking about eliminating regents' diplomas. Can you imagine? In New York. And they're very, very concerned about the smaller level crimes, the shoplifting. I'm brushing my teeth with children's bubblegum flavored toothpaste because it's the only thing I can buy at the drugstore without waiting for a clerk to unlock the case. Can you imagine?
But it is most democratic cities. It's just not New York. Go to any other city. It's worse here, and maybe not even as bad as some other places, but it's pretty bad in most democratic cities.
Last night, the voters in Los Angeles, they threw out their uber liberal DA, George Gascon, and they voted in Proposition 36 to hike the penalties on petty crimes like smash and grab shoplifting.
Wow.
And what city is more liberal than mega liberal LA, right?
I'm going to focus on you a minute, Mark. So tell us about, and everything that Betsy said, I think anybody listening with any common sense, no matter what side, we all want the same thing. We want safe cities, we want good schools, we want law and order, we want bail reform, we want all of that. But how do we stop the exodus? Like, you're part of the Chamber of Commerce. What do you think the best way to stop this mass? I think it was 500,000 people left. How do we stop it?
Well, there's different problems. The quality of life was a big issue. The Chamber of Commerce, we heard it. It got bigger and more exacerbated after COVID. And we have democratic socialist. Yet we live in a capitalistic democracy. And now we're a republic. And the voters spoke last night. But the quality of life is something that we need. Just for everybody who's here. People that are leaving are also leaving because of the cost of the city. Mm-hmm. So some of those democratic principles, and you could go back to JFK and Lyndon Johnson, they weren't socialist, but they wanted to lift everybody up like a rising tide. And we believe in that. I live in Westchester County, and the Harrison School District is good. One of the reasons we bought a home there. And we don't want our school districts to have to just teach to the poorest of people, and that's the level. We want to take care of the people that don't have the same abilities or the same monies, but we have to offer excellence.
So what would you do now? Because this is all going to take time, and I think Save New York 2025 is phenomenal. I think it's everybody needs it.
I don't know where the 2025 came from. It's just saveourcityny.org.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to give the
Yes,
website
perfect,
so that everyone listening can come, because we want you to come to the website, sign up, be a part of the team. Saveourcityny.org. That's the website.
Love it. Save Our City.
And we're going to fill Madison Square Garden with all the New Yorkers who have not been heard in the past and want to have a say, right, in the future of our city.
And if we can save the greatest city in the world, and I think with the leadership we have, we can save not only America, we can show the world that this democracy, the capitalism, jobs, family values, respect for everybody is the way to go.
And let me say, I think most New Yorkers are sick of the ideology. They just want these practical things.
They don't want to be in Florida with the hurricanes.
Not worried, right? They want to know when their children go to school that they're going to learn something, right? They want to be able to go into a store and not worry that the store's not going to be there anymore because the shoplifters have cleaned it out. And even on Madison Avenue, the fanciest stores, they're going out of business because who could stand the losses?
So one of the biggest issues everybody knows is this bail reform. I mean, this fact that...
Why do you use the word reform?
Well, they call it... We want to restore...
Yeah,
of course. I understand.
It was called bail elimination. That's what it is.
Well, how are we going to reverse that? What do you think is the next step? Because that is one of the major issues about how we can get people to stay here because we want safety. So I want to ask you, Betsy, how do you do that?
Well, then... you have to work with the state legislature. And there are some promising things. And I don't want to sound partisan because this is not a partisan cause. We have a lot of great Democrats on our committee, and we're reaching out to a city that is major Democratic. But they're persuadable purples. That's what I call them. My wonderful persuadable purples. All the people out there who generally vote Democratic, but they just want to go to the polls and elect somebody who's going to save their city, right? It doesn't matter what the tag is, Democratic, Republican, Socialist, Conservative. It doesn't matter.
So tell us the good news you started to say. There's some good news out there about it.
Well, it doesn't matter. Party does not matter in this.
Right.
What we need are safe streets for everybody.
Right.
Whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican. We've had many conversations at the Chamber with our board members, our political action committee members. And the Democratic Socialist label, or not the God bless America, but God damn America, good. Well, then maybe you should look for another country, another state. If you don't like it here, we're not forcing you to stay. But the people that want to live here work here, go to school here, they deserve opportunity and they deserve safety. They deserve a quality of life. This is and you alluded to it. Why can't people stay here? Because it's too expensive.
160 financial institutions have left New York in the last 3 years. I'm going to repeat that. 160 financial institutions have left New York.
Where did they go, Florida or Texas?
Both, and other places too. And they didn't go for the weather, honey. They went because it's less expensive to live in these other places, and people can raise their families, send them to public school, right? They don't have to worry. It's the combination of quality of life and cost. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
Yes, and practicality. We have too many institutions here that need to be put to bed or institutionalized. When you have affordable housing, and we have a responsibility to keep it decent, and we need affordable housing.
Yes.
We need people that are willing to work.
We need people. We need housing
We
for police
do wanna-
officers and teachers and
Yes.
firemen. We need,
Our
of course,
cops are
infrastructure.
driving it from Suffolk County.
I know. We have to
Can
give
you
them
imagine?
yeah,
and
we have to-
sleeping overnight at the station house because they can't handle the commute.
I understand.
That's not quality of life.
It's not good for anybody. We used to make the analogy that if the people that keep our hotels clean or the shoe chefs in restaurants have to commute the same distance as
Right.
our protectors, then they're more apt to slice their finger. And, it's not good. We need affordable housing. We need moderate housing. We need federally
And by the way, it doesn't have to be government built, because the fact is, if we got rid of a lot of the onerous rent regulations, the market would provide more housing. The marketplace would do it.
Well, that's another whole subject, which we'll have
Yes,
to get you back here on, because then we get into all the warehouse departments, and we actually do have places for these people to live, but we just don't want to. The laws, the housing court's such a mess.
Right.
But we'll get back to that. Let's stay on New York and saving our city, which I love, love, love. I'm going to tell everybody about it. New York has as many, well, they say it's the second largest population of Jewish people other than Tel Aviv.
No, it's the largest in the world.
Well,
Larger
other than Israel.
Tel Aviv and Jerusalem combined.
I have to fact check that, but maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. Regardless, all these Jews, all the people that have worked so hard, the infrastructure of this city, and these demonstrations, and they can't send the college campuses. What about that? How do you think we should address that? I'm going to start with Mark because...
Well, we at the Chamber, we've watched. I'm privileged. Our building is a tenant in the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen. That's a school that teaches people to use their hands. There's been too much ideology of if you don't go to a school and get an English degree, you're not going to get a job. That's the furthest thing from the truth. So these institutions, whether they're nursing schools or Harvard and Yale, they need to put up a pile of money so that we can invest that money. And that money would be used if you give somebody a degree, whether it's a two-year
I think
degree.
you didn't understand my question, Mark. I'm very sorry. I was talking about the anti-Semitism on these schools' campuses and what's going on in
Right.
this town, because the Jewish person does not feel safe sending
No
their kids to school.
intimidation.
And what is the difference between hate speech and hurt speech? And I want to know
I
what we
wanna
can
jump
do
in
on
on
to
this.
save New York City, save our city, that's going to address this, because that's a lot of people want to
That particular
leave.
case, you're exactly right. I know Betsy feels strongly about it. But we needed, at the time, leadership from those campuses to get these non-students, these radicals, these
Right.
intimidators, these trespassers, these people that didn't apply for permits. No
If you were the
respect
governor,
for-
what would you do?
I would have
Jail
taken those
them.
students off the
Love her.
campus.
What?
Yes, you had to take the disruptors off the campus.
And they were violating the law. They were trespassing.
And they only got a misdemeanor, those
That's
5
right.
Columbia
But
kids.
Here's the other thing. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits intimidation, bullying, discrimination. Colleges have interpreted that to protect only black students and Hispanic students. It protects Jewish students too. And the
Italian
Department
students,
of
and Korean
Education,
students.
right, has to, the Federal Department of Education should be enforcing it, but they're not. There is a bill in Congress. It's been passed by the House already. Chuck Schumer is holding it up in the Senate till after this election because he did not want to divide the Democratic Party. That's what he said. But that bill will require, when it's passed and signed into law, That bill will require the Federal Department of Education to penalize campuses by withholding their federal funds if they allow discrimination and bullying of Jewish students, just the way they already withhold funds in any instance where a Latino or black student is penalized.
Is this Virginia Fox a part of this?
Yes, that must be passed into law and enforced. And I'm sorry to say, because I don't want to get political, but it's Schumer who has held it up all these months. Mike Lawler, the congressman from upstate, was one of the major sponsors of this bill.
He won handsomely, too.
Yes, he did.
So we didn't want to talk politics, but on the day after, we have to talk about politics because everybody's like, why are we not talking about politics? This is like a huge day. Do you think that with President Trump back in, it's going to help New York City? Because last time when he was the president, he kind of didn't pay much attention to us. Do you think that he's going to invest and be part of New York? His son is going to school here. Do you think he's going to it's going to make a difference now that he's the president?
Yes, and I think we need leadership in New York that's not so hostile to the president. After all, we have an attorney general who's tried to literally bankrupt him, right, over a preposterous case. We've had a DA who's tried to lock him up. Why don't we make nice with the president? What a great idea that is. Let's make nice with the president of the United States.
And to answer your question, I think Eric Adams has learned a lesson here, and he's our mayor.
He's a happy man today.
He's a happy man. And we need our local politicians, our state politicians, to work with our federal politicians. And we need to shine a spotlight on that because we need federal money. Lord knows we pay enough in as New Yorkers. We should get our fair share back.
Thank you, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, for pointing out decades ago that New York always gets shortchanged in that relationship.
Let's go back to something that I find very interesting, Betsy. You jumped it when you said it initially about the voting. Such a small turnout. I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, we'll just say it was 18% of people voted. What was the number?
7% in the primary in June and 12% in the 2023 general election when all 51 seats of the city council were to be filled. And that said to me that we need to send a message to New Yorkers. We are an agent of change. We're nonpartisan, but we're going to give you a megaphone. We want you to be involved, engaged, govern your city. Don't leave it for the extremists on either side who just want to make their own professional political careers. Take charge. We can save New York.
We need more good people to step up into this arena because if you look at the city council, it's very socialistic. It's gone beyond being progressive. It's gone beyond being democratic. It's to the point where there's too many schisms. When Amazon was knocked out of the box, I talked to some of the leaders and I could not understand, well, we don't need those $150,000 jobs. They're not for our constituents. And I go, let's see, when I went to MBA school, I learned that for every dollar spent, or for every good $150,000 job, there's going to be 10 or 20 local jobs for your constituents. And you threw that out for political posturing.
I know.
Terrible.
It's
Let
terrible.
me point out what some of the new priorities of the New York City Council are, and you can judge for yourself whether these represent the values of most New Yorkers. Okay, number one, they just passed a bill that says living on the street is a human right. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled just the opposite. We don't want people sleeping on the street. But the New York City Council thinks it's just fine. To heck with your neighborhood or quality of life. Number two, they are now entertaining a bill to provide prosthetic sexual devices at Rikers Island. That's not one of our top priorities, right? I won't even go into what they are. Number three, they've just imposed huge new paperwork burdens on street police, cops on the beat, so that whenever a policeman encounters anybody for any reason on the street and talks to them, they have to fill out a ream of papers instead of moving on to the next issue, right? That's going to keep our police handcuffed, literally.
Like they're not handcuffed enough.
Exactly. So we need a city council that's more responsive to the needs of families and business owners and employees all throughout the city. It's not these bizarre fringe causes.
Betsy, have you identified any candidates that are more centrist that you could endorse under this new Save Our City? Because we all need to get behind that.
Right, we will be. And let me just say right now, we're having our first forum. It's not a candidates forum. It's a public safety forum. And it's in Mark's building. Isn't that great? It's going to be November 21st at 6 p.m. We are inviting the public to attend. We're going to talk about how to make New York City safer. Featured Ray Kelly. Featured experienced police officers. Featured Nicole Gelinas from the Manhattan Institute. We're going to have a really informed group addressing the issue, inviting questions from the audience. November 21st, 6 p.m., the address, Mark?
20 West 44th.
20 West 44th Street.
I have to know if this is a coincidence or is Nazia, who is the booker here at WABC, just a genius, because I am having a party on December 11th here at WABC for all the leaders in New York about saving our city. Before I even knew about this. So here we are, and they're all coming, and it's all about saving our city, so we think alike. I hope our whole audience hears this, because we're going to save the city. We're not stopping. We're going to keep going. We're going to make this great. Fortunes have been made here, and we're going to keep going. I get that. How do we find out about you? Say it again.
Come to saveourcityny.org. We welcome you to join us. We want you on our team. We want to be a megaphone for you, a facilitator for the great public in New York to save the city themselves. Right?
And go ahead, and I want you to just tell us again the 5 key points that you're standing
We're going to stop the flight of businesses and residents from New York. We're going to stop the shoplifting and petty crime that's driving businesses out. We're going to provide safety on the streets. We're going to stop the anti-Semitism. And we're going to ensure that public schools reach for good standards for all the kids.
And we're going to identify good candidates that are centrists across both aisles that are going to help get this done.
We are nonpartisan.
Yes.
A 501c3.
Okay. Well, this is fantastic. I appreciate you both coming here. I don't have any more questions. I'm getting on board, and all my listeners are going to sign up for this, and we're going to save our city. Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you, Betsy.
Thank you.
Suzanne.